Good morning to all of you, and thanks, Satyan, for giving me the opportunity to share my experience on blunt ocular trauma and its management. Now, as you know, the blunt ocular trauma is a common situation when anybody is in emergency duty, he may come across, and the blunt trauma generally occurs with any object whose diameter is smaller than the diameter of the opening of the orbit. And when trauma occurs, it causes different changes in the eye. It may be a compression of the globe, decompensation, overshooting, and oscillation. The globe may be deformed, its diameter may be reduced even up to 28%. As a result of that, starting from the lens dislocation, vitreous hemorrhage, retinal detachment, and many clinical situations we can come across. So there is extreme stretch, and there is relative displacement of the intraocular structure, and there is shearing force, which together determines the what will be the impact of the injury. And here you can see a traumatic angle recession. This slide has been given by my colleague, and an injury can give rise to this sort of changes. So all case requires an initial ophthalmic evaluation to determine what is the extent of the injury, is there any extraocular injury, and the general status of the patient. We have to elicit the proper clinical history and document the setting on which the injury has occurred, because subsequently we may have to appear in the court for giving the evidence. The clinical examination comprises the vision, pupil, a careful slit lamp examination, and a fundus examination with indirect ophthalmoscope. And if the media is not clear and sufficiently not visible, then we can take help of the diagnostic ultrasound. It may give valuable information, and the computed tomography. Here you can see the globe fracture, and it can be depicted in computed tomography. Now let us come to the effect which can involve following injury. The lens may dislocate, both anterior as well as posteriorly it can dislocate. It may be associated with even a retinal detachment depending upon the extent of the injury. If the intraocular lens is there, the intraocular lens may display. These are some of the specimens we have retrieved, and here you can see the lens is displaced. Now, when the lens or IOL displays, the treatment is the vitrectomy or lensectomy, along with or IOL explantation and the scleral fixation of the intraocular lens. And that is the easiest way by which the vision can be restored if there is no other serious injury. The second common thing that we come across is the traumatic macular hole. Its configuration will vary depending upon case to case. Now, the macular hemorrhage, the macular hole management result is not as good as idiopathic macular hole. Here you can see that the macular hole we can treat by vitrectomy, ILM peeling, and intraocular, the gas tamponade. In some cases, you can expect a really pretty good result. Here I show you one case, a small macular hole, and it can be healed up by macular hole surgery. The retinal tear is possible, and various locations the retinal tear can occur, and it may come with any one of the configuration. And so long the posterior pole is not affected, usually the result of the treatment is very good. This is another example. And if a small peripheral tear occurs, then a peripheral barrage is sufficient and to be monitored. The post-treatment monitoring, periodical monitoring is necessary. The cryopexy has not much role, and sometimes when the giant retinal tear or retinal dialysis occurs, then we can do a scleral buckling procedure. It is a conventional procedure, no it is different. And in the previous trauma course, they have shown the scleral buckling surgical procedure, so I am not showing you. So this is a standard procedure. The principle of work of the buckling will be same as the conventional procedure. Sometimes you have to drain the fluid, and in almost all situations, the retina will settle down. Now, traumatic retinal dialysis, scleral buckling, success rate in our hand is nearing 98%, but sometimes we may come across the buckle may displace the posteriorly, and that has happened in this case. Sometimes the vitrectomy can be done, in particularly if the TR is posteriorly, and there is a standard procedure, and vitrectomy, fluid gas exchange, settlement of the retina. We may have to use perfluorocarbon. So all this is standard procedure. No way it is different from if the TR occurs due to TR and detachment occurs following trauma. And the prognosis sometimes may be guarded if it is a long-standing one. And finally, we may have to do a repeated surgery and end up with a 360-degree retinotomy. But if the posterior pole remains settled, can be made settle, then prognosis-wise, some amount of ambulatory vision can be given back. In this case, the patient retained a good vision. The next common and frequent thing is subhyaloid hemorrhage. If the subhyaloid hemorrhage occurs, it can come with any configuration, smaller or bigger hemorrhage. Here you can see it has a natural resolution, and here a laser hyalurectomy was done to resolve the hemorrhage. So the treatment may be an observation, laser hyalurectomy, vitreous and gas, the TPA injection, intravitreal gas. It is alone or in combination. This is another example of the vitreous hemorrhage. And many of the vitreous hemorrhage, if the patient, after the patient counseling, really you have to take a decision whether we are going for an intervention or observe for a certain period of time. Regarding the presence of blood in front of the macula, the response or result of the treatments are variable. At what interval the siderotic effect will happen, not known, and it will really happen in a given case, it is also not known. Now, another rare condition is known as hemorrhagic necrosis of the retina. It is not a very common condition. I have found around about 10 cases of hemorrhagic necrosis. So, when there is no injury to the eye, but a pellet passes into the orbit with a high velocity, we can find this sort of hemorrhagic necrosis. Now, sometimes it may require surgical intervention, and sometimes it may not require. The Barlin's edema is another common finding following trauma. Depending upon the extent of the injury, the recovery depends. The choroidal rupture may be direct choroidal rupture, or it may be indirect choroidal rupture. Direct are occurring in the periphery, and indirect are occurring nearing the optic disc. Now, the direct tears are generally not visible, but with the angiography you can demonstrate, and this is the common sequelae. The macula, if it is okay, vision is good, but if the folds etc. develops, then it may have to do again a repeat surgery. This is another example. Here you can see the tear is here, macula is okay, good visual prognosis. Here exactly onto the macula, so we can assess that the visual acuity or recovery of the vision will not be good. And this is a resolution of the macular hemorrhage following trauma. This case may intervention, if it is done, the result is the plus minus. Now here is one case, is a tumor calcinosis case. There is an angioid streak with a small finger leg injury. There is a rupture, and there was neovascularization. And this sort of case will require intravitreal anti-VEGF agent to control the situation. The globe rupture is possible. Anteriorly, the globe may be in the limbus, and posteriorly in the weak points. So, weak points of the eye. And these cases where the media is not seen, we take help of investigation, B scan, ultrasonography, then CT scan and MRI in selective cases. If the scleral rupture is there, it is to be repaired. It may be supported by the vitrectomy if it is indicated. In no situation, even the PL is negative, the eye should be removed. Because from our experience, we have seen many cases, even the PL doubtful case they have regained vision. Thank you for the patience hearing.